Welcome back to The Interview. I'm your host, Susan Lee MacDonald. Jazz is a place where anyone can go, a magical refuge where people go to listen to the best music. Today's guest is a very special jazz vocalist who has taken the road less traveled. Join me and meet the fabulous Sunny Kim. The jazz vocalist who breathes new life into jazz by adding experimental sounds in her own style. It's the talented jazz musician, Sunny Kim. A jazz critic once described her as a treasured vocalist who has proven that jazz isn't a fossilized genre and is in fact still alive and breathing. Get ready to meet one of the most iconic and progressive musicians on the Korean jazz scene today. Let me introduce you to Sunny Kim. First of all, Sunny, I'd like to thank you so much for being on The Interview. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, the pleasure is mine.
You know, as we were doing the opening for the show and listening to the music and your voice, by the way, you've got an incredible voice.
Oh, thank you.
It was so wonderful to hear you. And as I was listening to the song, I felt like I was just in this kind of dreamy state of being out in nature, looking up at the sky in a large field. It felt so comfortable to hear your voice together with the music.
Well, you're right, Susan. The song is about spending the whole day outside under a big tree with the sun, you know, breaking through the leaves and having the night kind of sneak in.
Really?
You know, having the stars kind of bloom.
Wow. Well, I think that with hearing that song, it definitely felt like that. And I didn't know that that was the kind of premise of the song. And what is the song called?
It's called In Between.
In Between, okay. And that's from your new album, The Painter's Eye, is that right?
That's right.
Oh, and you are not only the vocalist for the song, but you also wrote the song too.
Yeah, I composed, I wrote the music to it.
Wow,
yeah.
that's incredible talent.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it. I know that you've been living abroad for quite some time, and you've returned recently to Korea.
That's right.
And how has it been adjusting back to living in Korea?
Well, it's been an adventure, you know?
Yeah.
Just getting to know Korea again, because I left when I was so young. So Korea had changed, and I also had changed. So we had to get to know each other again.
Yeah. How has that process been for you?
You know, at times frustrating, of course, but most of all very insightful, you know, because it's really getting to know myself.
Yes. I'd like to ask you about The Painter's Eye. I know it's released in the US, in New York, and it's soon to be released here in Korea. And I'm curious why you chose to have it be released not in Korea, but first out west.
Well, because, you know, New York is the mecca for jazz. And I wanted to try it out there and get different opinions and see if people like it. You know? One of the things that I heard was that it's looking at very small things. You know, it's more of looking inward than outward. You know, it's contemplative, that it's very kind of meditative and serene, which I'm happy about, because that was part of what I wanted to do, what I wanted to achieve through the music.
Now, as it's going to be released here in Korea, what type of expectations and what do you anticipate will happen when it's released here?
I hope people like it. I hope people will also see what I was seeing making the music. Basically, I wanted to get back to my like childish, like myself when I was a child. You know, I wanted to get in touch with that again.
Getting in touch with your inner child?
That's right. Yeah. You know, I was remembering, you know, what I was thinking and feeling when I was a little kid living in Korea.
Wow. So your album is basically inspired by you wanting to kind of return to your childhood days. And so you composed the music and wrote the songs here in Korea, I suppose.
Yeah. A few years back, a friend of mine gave me a book of poems, poems written by a Korean painter named Sundu Kim.
Okay.
He is a very well-known painter. Anyway, so when I got this poetry book and read it, and you know how it's made is that there's a poem and there's a painting that go together.
Okay.
You know, I had been looking for a way to connect again to what it means to be Korean for me.
Yes.
And that was it. You know, I instantly kind of felt again what I was feeling as a child, this innocence, this just pure admiration of the nature and things that go by very slowly. I'm a lover of nature, so you know, it was just really healing for me to just read you know, that poetry book, and I thought maybe I can write music to this.
Interesting. You know, it's amazing to me how creativity sparks other creativity. That, you know, if one person is creative, that can inspire someone else to be creative. And it's like a chain effect in a really great way.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, I was very lucky that I got that book.
That's fantastic.
And so after we hung out and talked about, you know, writing music to his work, he actually asked me if I would like to visit his hometown, you know, go on a trip with him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So with a couple other friends of ours, we went there, and he showed us all the spots where he sat for, you know, I'm sure many hundreds of hours painting, you know, and it was just amazing. So beautiful, and all these colors were all, you know, so much alive, you know, being with him. You know, sometimes you can hear or see more things if you're with somebody who see and hear a lot. Yes. Yeah, so it was really a lovely experience, and also it was just so nice to travel in Korea. It was my first time there, traveling in that part of, you know, the country, and I was so mesmerized, you know, because I had been to a lot of beautiful places in the world, but Korea it's breathtakingly beautiful, and it was a springtime, and all the flowers are blossoming, and it was just amazing, and the food there.
Yeah, that food in that area is. For Sunny Kim, painter's eye is a reflection of her early childhood memories in Korea. I'd like to talk a little bit about your experimental side of music. In being a jazz vocalist and singer-songwriter, you have used electronic music together with acoustic music, and that's not necessarily typical of most jazz performers and songwriters. Why did you decide to go that experimental route? Because it's a risk, right? I mean, and it's not like you were so established as a vocalist that you could afford necessarily to take certain risks, but why did you decide to do that?
Because the core belief that I have as an artist is that the arts should really represent the time, you know, and our world is changing like every day, right? And music should too, you know. And I know, of course, people like music that they're used to hearing. You know, people like familiar things, but I think there's got to be somebody that pushes, you know. And I think that eventually people will like what's authentic and what's, you know, new.
Now, what do you think has been the biggest risk you've taken with that experimental side of yours?
I think it was releasing the first record.
Yeah,
because that record is definitely an adventure. You know, even even people like critics who listen to a lot of things get confused. Like, what is this? You know, is this jazz? Is this rock? Is this, you know, what is this? They can't really categorize it.
What do you think about the efforts that a lot of people try to label music? Because, you know, there are these certain fixed genres. There's rock and roll, there's classic, there's new age, there's world, there's, you know, country and this and that. Now, do you think that it's necessary to kind of put your music in a certain genre, or would you rather have all the genres just kind of go away?
Well, you know, how people, like how brains work, I think we have to categorize, you know, but as artists, I don't think we have to do that for ourselves, you know. I don't think we should worry about that, you know. We should just make the music that we hear in our head and we think is beautiful, you know. And I think it's, right now is the world, like everyone is so exposed to so much information, right, including music.
Yes.
We can hear music that was made in the 20s, or, you know, all kinds of world music, traditional music. And we really have a wide variety to choose from, you know? So I think people people who make the music shouldn't worry about it. You know, let the other people label it if they want. But yeah.
I know that when you perform the songs from your album live, that you use an element that you don't have on the album, which is using the Korean traditional instrument, the daegum.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what has been people's reaction when you've used the daegum? Because it's not an instrument that most people, especially from the West, are used to hearing.
Yeah, just recently, about a month ago, I performed at the New York City Winter Jazz Festival.
Yes.
Fortunately, the daegum player was able to join me there. So we performed together, and people, I'm sure for most people, it was the first time hearing and seeing that instrument played live, and people were, you know, really thrilled. I could see that they were very curious and happy to hear that instrument.
Wonderful. Now, why did you choose that particular instrument as opposed to another instrument, another Korean instrument?
Because I think it fits really well with the instrumentation I already have, which is drums, contrabass, guitar, and piano. And on the record, I had a fabulous saxophonist who also played clarinet. And for the performance, I invited, instead of him, I invited the daegum player.
Wow, wonderful. Now, do you ever feel that you would like to be able to do more kind of traditional Korean style singing? I know you're trained as a jazz vocalist, and Korean traditional music is so very different, you know, pansori and whatnot. But is there ever kind of a feeling that you'd like to learn that too?
Yes, of course. You know, in fact, I spent the summer when I was in college in Korea and took lessons.
Really?
Yeah, in Korean style, traditional style singing.
Wow.
Which was really fun, but I couldn't really get into it so deeply.
Why was that?
Because I only had the summer to spend here at the time, but I really enjoyed it. It's a totally different kind of singing, you know, different kind of vocalizing. But I love the textures, different ornaments that's used in the melodies. You know, how guttural and bluesy, you know, so emotional and soulful it is. And I'm interested, and you know, more than the singing part, I'm more interested in the instruments, you know, like 가야금, 가문고, and 해금, and piri. Like I think. Just the sounds that can get are so interesting, and that I could, I'm gonna try and study more and think about how I can get those sounds involved in my music, you know, and mix it together with jazz.
That sounds like it would be amazing. You know, one of the things that I love about Korean traditional music and jazz is that they both have this element of what Koreans call han, right? The feeling of intense longing, intense emotion, the intense sadness, and jazz has that element too, right?
That's right.
And it's different than, you know, just musical, blah, 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 you know, kind of singing and music. So I wonder if it's maybe because of your connection with, you know, being a Korean, that jazz maybe came a little bit easier to you because you were able to kind of access a little bit of that, you know, Korean han.
Definitely. The first jazz singer that really got me was Billie Holiday. And you know, there's so much han in her singing.
Yes.
You know, different kinds of, you know, it's a different sound world. Yes. Obviously, but the feelings, the intensity of the feelings are there. I actually love all music that has that raw like emotions. in my album Painter's Eye, I try to be the opposite of it, you know, because I wanted to capture that innocence and simplicity.
Yes.
What I consider like a big part of Korean beauty is, you know. So I try to be less, you know. I try to take out stuff a lot, you know, emotions and, you know, all the musical ideas. Like I try to be just really simple, you know, like like a white vase, you know, Korean like old style vase. Like it's just the shape and the texture and nothing on it, but it's so beautiful.
Yes,
right?
just in its simplicity is beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. So on this album, I try to, you know, really kind of retain myself, you know, and not be so emotional. But I love, you know, the emotional music too.
Switching gears a little bit, I know that you've performed a lot stateside, and maybe a lot of people may not be aware, but you've performed at Carnegie Hall, at the famous Blue Note in New York City. You performed at so many very prestigious places in the U.S., and I'm curious, what has it felt like performing in major halls and kind of places that are symbolic of jazz?
First of all, like everything seems to work well in those places, like the sound, and people, you know, are just more friendly and just everything is comfortable, you know. But at the same time, you know, because those are big places, I usually get nervous, you know.
How do you deal with the stage fright then?
You know, it's been like trial and error. Yeah. And because I think inside I'm really a shy person.
Really?
Yeah.
You would never know that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Because of my job, you know, I have to be comfortable, like sharing my what's inside, you know. So I tried many different things, you know, like deep breathing or just imagining that audience members are like babies or
or imagining that they're all naked.
Though she says she suffers from stage fright, as soon as she takes the stage, she captivates the crowd with her beautiful yet effortless vocals.
Summer afternoon, rain has come. Sun shines quiet in the back road. On shelter soon, and hatred into forgiveness.
Now, you performed at the 2007 Newport Jazz Festival, which is a super prestigious jazz festival, and you were one of the only Koreans to have ever performed there at that time. What was it like to be one of the first Koreans to perform at that jazz festival?
You know, I was scared. You know, because I was performing with Roswell Rudd, who is like a living legend. You know, he's in his late 70s now, and very well respected, you know, throughout the world, and has done tons of amazing musical things. You know, I was really praying that I would do a good job of representing him, you know, like telling his stories, you know, and his songs are so like insightful. You know, it's what your grandpa or grandma would tell you, like when you're down, or you know, it has so much wisdom. So I just felt so honored that he would trust me with those songs, and that that he, you know, he believed that I could deliver them and be a good representative of his music.
How did you meet him? Because I mean, he is a living legend in jazz. How was that connection made?
When I first moved to New York, I sang at Merkin Hall at the Steve Lacy's memorial concert. Steve Lacy, the great saxophonist and composer, had passed away, you know, a few months back, and Roswell Rudd and Steve Lacy were best friends, you know, since like the 50s, I think. And so he decided to organize that event.
I see.
And I was very fortunate to be a part of it. And he heard me for the first time there, and he gave me a call afterwards.
Now, did he give you any kind of advice? Because I know he's now kind of like a mentor to you on some level. So do you remember anything that he said to you that kind of inspired you, or maybe even a criticism that you heard that you wanted to do better?
He's such a sweet person and such a generous person, and so wise, and he'll say these things kind of out of nowhere. So you have to kind of pay attention, you know. One of the things that he said that really influenced me was that when we play music for people, we're not playing our instrument, we're playing our soul, you know.
Wow, that's really deep.
Yeah, so like it teaches me to be a good person, an interested and engaged person, and interested in other people and the world.
What do you think it takes to be a successful jazz vocalist?
I think you need to enjoy being in the moment, taking risks, you know, and listening to other people. And you have to know the music. I mean, you have to know, you know, you can't just sing, have a good voice. You have to understand music. You have to be able to communicate what you want in the music with musicians. You have to be able to communicate musically and, you know, react. Yeah, you have to know the music, you know.
Now, being a singer-songwriter, you know your music, but how difficult is it to communicate what you intended for this song to sound like to someone who has never heard it before?
There are many musical ways to communicate, like technical things, like, you know, I want this part to build up, or I want this part to be soft, or things like that. But also, sometimes I like to be kind of metaphorical and say, I want this part, guitar part, to be boiling inside, but very icy. Some people will react well to that, some people don't, but so I think it works pretty well.
So giving them kind of a visual of how they should perform also helps to translate to get them to perform in the manner that you want them to? Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. But it depends on the player. But you know, because I don't want to be so specific, because jazz is all about the moment, and it's all about expressing individuality and what that person brings into the music. I feel that it's really important to leave that space for that person to be themselves, you know, and interpret the music the way they hear it. So I really like to just give them like a frame so that they can really be themselves.
Interesting. I'm sure you're asked this question a lot as an artist, but what would you say are your main inspirations for writing music or performing? I know that's a really general question, but how would you describe that?
A lot of the times it's music that I love, you know, something that I hear and just feel so excited about and want to, you know, like recreate like a aspect of that, you know, music. And other times it's life, when I feel frustrated, angry, or joyful, you know, it's extremely emotional and have to do something.
So it's like an outpouring of what's happening inside of you?
I think so, yeah. And I love that part about being an artist, that you know, a lot of these emotions can be like captured and shared, because there are not so many healthy ways to express these feelings, right?
It's true. Yeah,
for a lot of people. And I think it's actually one of the most important aspects of performing. So that people, you know, what is really true to me can be expressed and communicated to people, and that those feelings can be released in the audience. And in that way, I think it's healing.
I'd like to ask you to sing a little bit.
Well, let's see. It is the springtime. Give your love with love, and love will love you back, you'll see. When you are loved by love, it's like the first time. Listen when others talk, waken when others sleep, water the roses with your tears, start of a new life.
It's so beautiful. Oh, wow. You have such a rich voice. I mean, there's such richness, and it just sounds like a really wealthy, rich voice.
Thank you.
It's really lovely, and I love the fact that that with the warmth and the richness, that it's still really approachable. And thank you so much for that.
Thanks for listening.
When people hear you sing and you've heard them kind of give you compliments, what do they normally say? I know that's kind of hard to say yourself, but
you know, the biggest compliment is always that someone cried, you know, because it was a release for them, release of something, you know, release of something real, you know. So that's always the best.
Hearing you sing and just looking at you, you're smiling. There just seems to be such a glow about you when you're singing. And I wonder, how are you actually feeling when you sing?
Feels great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know. And just by opening my mouth, something pretty comes out. I don't mean to be like sounding conceited, but you know what I mean? And then it disappears. So, you know, it's not like painting you know, that it's captured and it can be forever. A singing is there for the moment and then it disappears. So there's something magical about it, but it feels good to sing. Yeah.
When you're upset, do you tend to just go off into the room and start singing and then you feel a release?
When I was a teenager, I did a lot of that. Yeah. I would sing and sing and sing like all day after school.
Wow.
Come home and play piano and sing.
Now, as you're singing now, I can tell that this isn't something that just happened overnight. Like you said that you sang as a child too. I imagine that you showed your talent as a singer, as a good singer, early on in life. Who was it that kind of noticed that talent in your family, that kind of gave you that push to perform a little bit more?
It was my grandmother.
Oh.
I used to live with, we used to live with her. And you know, when I was a baby, I don't remember this, you know, but I guess I was singing and dancing all the time. Like everything I heard, I would sing back and dance to it.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, and so my grandmother thought it was adorable, you know, and she took me to all of her gatherings with her friends, like most every day, I guess. And she would, you know, take me and bring me, and she, you know, she would ask me to sing for everyone, and so I was performing all the time. So
from when you were a wee little child, you were performing for your grandmother's friends and every place that she went. So maybe that's the reason why it was not only fun for your grandmother, but fun for you too, because you got to spend quality time with your grandmother, and people were always like, you know, saying how wonderful you were.
Yeah, it was, I don't remember, but you know, I think that's why I'm kind of maybe a little bit more, like I had my practice.
Yeah. So then, as a child, you were performing just kind of for fun, and then when you hit your teenage years, and when you moved to Malaysia, I understand that that's something that was such an impact for you, that you were moved to sing more. Why was that?
Because I was in a new environment, and because I couldn't speak English. It was difficult, you know, and you're right, I was in my like coming of age, you know, like adolescence period. So it was a lot of you know, finding out how I could live, you know, that way. You know, I feel like it took me a while to get to know myself, you know, because there were so many beliefs, so many different kinds of value systems that I had to filter, you know, and choose what could be part of me, you know. So it's been kind of a long process of that, which has been difficult sometimes, but I think it's been helping me to have a unique perspective of the world. And I wasn't following everything in other classes other than music classes, you know. And during the music classes, I was able to just do everything that everyone else does, you know, and
better maybe.
You know, play the piano and sing, and as long as I knew the words and memorized the words, then I could really communicate. You know, I think that's when I learned that you can really communicate with music. This is when I became interested in jazz, because at the school that I went to in Malaysia, international school, Kuala Lumpur.
Yes.
They had a really great music program there, and one of the music teachers was a big fan of jazz.
Yes.
And he got together a jazz big band, you know, and so people auditioned for it. And we had festivals like twice a year, you know, where we would invite all the parents and friends and just have a night of hanging out and eating international foods and you know, performing, you know, and the jazz big band. performed like jazz choirs, like rock bands and dances and all this, you know, amazing entertainment. And I think at that time it was new to me, but I really enjoyed being a part of it.
Yes.
You know, performing and mingling and seeing things, you know, being a part of like a festival.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
So you became interested in jazz at a pretty early age when your musical kind of repertoire was being formed. When was it that you decided that you really wanted to become a jazz vocalist?
That was after I went to America.
And you studied in Denver, at the University of Denver, right?
In Denver, Colorado. I was exposed to a lot of traditional jazz as well as other American popular music like funk or hip hop.
I love funk, yeah.
You know, soul, R&B, and I sang in bands that played that kind of music and toured a lot. And then when I moved to Boston to go to England Conservatory, that's when I was more like guided to look at more new music, avant-garde, more experimental music. So there I had an opportunity to kind of bring together everything that I had experienced and create something new.
That's fantastic. Now, because you've had this multicultural experience, I can imagine that that's influenced you as an artist. It's influenced you as a singer. And if you were able to say what it is about the different cultures that you lived in that has helped you to be a better musician, a better singer, vocalist, what do you think that would be?
I think the biggest thing is knowing how to adapt. And open myself to new ideas and new perspectives quite easily, you know, because I had to do that to survive, you know. And so when I hear a brand new set of music or some very different kind of music than what I'm used to, I am able to just let go of what I know and just open myself and try to make it my own.
Now, do you feel that as a musician that you've kind of been changing throughout the past number of years, or do you feel that you've always had that core that's always stayed constant?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
You know, kind of the creative and wanting the new things, you know, kind of avant-garde. But living in different places, I was exposed to many different genres of music. So I think my music evolved throughout, you know, my life, depending on the places I lived.
Sunny, I'm going to ask you kind of a philosophical question.
Okay.
What is jazz to you?
To me, right? Personally.
Yes.
It's a playground where I can have my fun and make my own world.
Wow. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being terrible and 10 being perfection, where do you feel you are right now in terms of your ability to perform and to compose and all of that?
Well,
I know that's hard
don't
to
like
say.
to number myself, but you know, I think I'm still a baby. Like I'm really, you know, I'm not like super young, but I think as a musician, like I want to be able to sing when I'm like 80, you know? So in that aspect, I think I'm like at 3.
Well, you have really high expectations of yourself because hearing you, I think that you'd be close to the top half and not the bottom half. But we look forward to hearing more about how you progress in your career, and hopefully we'll all be around when you're 80.
Okay. Thanks.
Sunny, I'd like to ask you a favor. Would you be able to perform a song that you've personally written and composed that is one of your favorites?
I'll sing the song "Everywhere," which was included in the movie Late Autumn.
Okay, great.
There's a strange frenzy in my head of birds flying, each particle
circulating on its own. He's the one I love everywhere. There's a strange frenzy in my head of birds flying, each particle circulating on its own. He's the one I love everywhere. Lovebirds flying, each particle circulating on its own. He's the one I love everywhere.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Thank you.
Wow, I can listen to you singing all day. You're working on part of the soundtrack for a movie called Late Autumn. In Korean, it's called Manchu, right? And you had that song called Everywhere that became really popular.
I guess the film director Kim Tae-yong,
Yes.
he heard it and he loved that song and thought that it would be perfect song to end the film. The director Kim Tae-yong is very picky about music.
Yes.
And he has his own opinions, you know, and I think he did a good job picking it.
Yeah. Well, it's been such an amazing time to get to know you, Sunny. You're so sweet and so bright, like your name, Sunny. And I think that a lot of the people who are watching the show will probably want to hear a little bit more about your continued success. And so thank you again for being part of my show. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to see you perform again.
Thank you so much for having me.